Hello, everybody. It's my pleasure to welcome you at Windows to the World. Today, we have the pleasure to have with us the renowned author of several books, Mr. Peter Alatsas, that is an international hotelier, very famous for the two books of the recent one, Symbiosis, and the other one, Tea with Confucius. Hello, Peter. Welcome.
Hello to you and to all your audience.
Today we will discuss.
Nice to be here.
Peter. Nice to have you. Today we will discuss with Peter some main points on challenges that we all face in a personal and business level, how to cope with them in a more creative way, how to motivate ourselves, and how to overcome challenges that can be due to the different adaptations that we need to do in the work environment with ourselves, that we keep changing our motivations, our needs, and so on. So, Peter, tell me what your books have to do with. We cannot say that they belong in a category of clearly leadership books or philosophical books. It's rather a combination of all of this together.
Well, let me just say that the book basically, and all the books, are based on my experiences over the years managing. But at the same time, it's a mix of managing and traveling, because the two are complementary to a very large extent. Because as you move from one country to another, you encounter different cultures and different ways of doing things. So it's very difficult to anchor, let's say, a subject on one particular place. So yeah, they are partly leadership, partly motivation, and they are philosophical. I think it's very difficult to take the philosophical aspect out of it. So we could say then that there are elements of all of those things informed by my experience and my traveling. Now that applies to everybody. You know, if you're traveling and all you're doing is drinking wine and having a good time and sightseeing without absorbing anything, without understanding anything, and without critiquing anything, then of course you're better to stay home and watch television
and save some money.
Yeah, and yeah, and save a lot of money. That's for sure.
So, Peter, it's not a coincidence that the ancient philosophers, like you see in my background, used to say the best school is traveling. And those masterminds, they didn't have any PhDs and postdocs and stuff like that. They were creators of their own mentality. And they were absorbing, as you said, the key elements from wherever they were going, and they were combining them into a certain philosophy that could motivate others in different arenas. Yes?
Please go ahead.
No, please, you go ahead.
Well, you've raised a couple of key issues here, and I think going back to antiquity, in those days, people didn't travel for recreation necessarily or to have fun. It was all a learning experience. And when I was writing the Tea with Confucius book, I tried to find any linkage between Socrates, Plato, for example, or Socrates in particular. Actually Socrates was born 9 years after Confucius's death. Now the question was, how much were the Greek philosophers influenced by the Chinese wisdom, if you like? So nobody really knows for sure. But however, there had to be some kind of cross-pollination between all these ancient lands, Persia as well. the Israeli culture. So Chinese, certainly, as we've said. So again, without getting into, and I'm just a curious student of philosophy to a large extent, but very much interested in it because I think it's something that we should all delve into. Whether it's Socrates, Plato, Confucius, Hegel, Heidegger, or whoever you want, Voltaire, anybody. The whole question really is everything really is an expression of freedom. We're all chasing freedom to do this and to freedom to do that, freedom of expression and so forth. And it's all about discourse. Philosophy is about discussion and discourse. From a management point of view, it's about engagement and being engaged with your people to a very large extent, and to encourage dialogue, which is what symbiosis is all about, really. It's about living and coexisting, deciding together and making decisions in a mutual fashion. Of course, there's always someone that makes the final decision. There's no doubt about that. But it's extremely important, that when we talk about change, for example, most people, as we read, are interested in making change, but sometimes they don't mind others making change, but they don't want to make the changes themselves. And it's how you go about presenting change to people. This has been said time and again, and also research has proved this also, that it's not about what you want change. It's how you go about presenting the change. Let's put it that way. Now, of course, none of this is profound, to the seasoned manager. But for those who are aspiring to become managers, these things are extremely important.
Change is unavoidable, and we all know that, but we try to avoid the thought of it. In trying so, we complicate our lives. What would you advise, for example, to someone that is in that transit point, that he doesn't love the country where he's staying, he doesn't like the job that he's having or the sector that he is pursuing, he doesn't like the relationship he's in or the friends? What would you recommend to a person that is in that transit point, that he knows what she doesn't like, but isn't so sure of how to get more closer to what would potentially like more? Because of course we are not born with a business plan, and we analyze situations and we decide what we like, what we don't during those multiple trials.
Yeah, well, I tell you, what I can recommend is, I suppose, what I have done that's worked reasonably well for me. I mean, not in every case, but in most cases. And that is to take on, it's all about attitude, and to take on an attitude whereby you're eternally dissatisfied, not in the negative sense, but you're constantly looking for ways and means to improve things, to better yourself. Or to make a contribution in society that's going to make lives easier and safer and better for people. And a mantra that I've always followed is always new. And I learned this in Japan some years back if you go to the Sheraton Grand Tokyo Bay in Tokyo, there's a stone in the garden that has etched in it the words "always new." And that always fascinated me. And of course, I asked questions, and I was looking for answers about meaning. What does it all mean? And that's what we're all searching, really. And again, when we tie it back to travel, what are we looking when we travel? We're looking for meaning. What does it mean? For us, being able to travel is freedom. Travel for a lot of people is freedom, and that ties in with the means to be free. Okay, in many instances, it's about freedom, and it's about thinking for yourself and exploring and all these other beautiful things, discovering that we see in travel ads. But Yeah, I would just say curiosity is extremely important for creativity and also for change. So I think when someone is eternally dissatisfied and eternally forever looking to be creative and looking for new ways and means of doing things and improving themselves, well, you're going to stumble on some success along the way. You know, it's better than just hanging around and not doing these things. So yes. Now, one final point I do want to make about travel, and I wrote it somewhere in the book, and that is that travel is an antidote to ignorance. I think that the more people travel, the less ignorant they become, because, you know, in management, creativity and culture may be two central issues that we've discussed before, challenges to deal with. On the other hand, some of these things are extremely important too, you know, to be eternally dissatisfied and always looking for something new. So by doing all that, really, is that you're becoming less ignorant, and you're becoming a lot more, well, even tolerant. You know, most religions, when you look at philosophies and so on, what do they talk about? Love thy neighbor, love as you love yourself, and tolerance, and to be tolerant of others. Confucius did it. His teaching was basically about benevolence. Now, you know, you can go into all kinds of details and his quotations and what he said. That's fine, you know, and it'll take us another 3 hours to do this. But it's all about benevolence. What is benevolence in the final analysis? It's to be curious, courteous, excuse me. For curious too. It's to be courteous and to be polite, which is what, you know, and to be hospitable, which is what hospitality is all about. That's our business. If you have people who can't do these things, then they should drive trucks. And I have nothing against truck drivers. They're essential to our existence. But there you have it.
That brings me to the next question. Peter, you said we are all searching for a meaning. A meaning that we search by traveling, by changing friend list, by changing address, by changing way of living, by changing status, generally by changing. So some people won't need that more, some people need that less. My question is the meaning that we find also in the working environment, and this is what Aristotle used to say as well, the ancient Greek philosopher: give people a meaning and you win their heart. Many successful entrepreneurs, many successful companies like Marriott, for example, and of course we know many more, have applied this philosophy by creating some company culture that gives the sense of belonging to the employees. And this is, of course, translated to the sense of security, and they can also transmit that to the customers or clients or guests, whatever this industry is about.
I think that, to your point, Marriott was probably the first. In fact, it was the first that put people before customers. And I had the privilege of being associated and learned a lot from that company in my earlier career. And, you know, people thought they were crazy, you know, to ever suggest that we put people first and customers second, you know, and they've done it successfully. Their success is due to many, many other things. But I think I got that part right. And I think you have organizations today who are waking up to the fact, almost like, you know, they're late to the party, but the music is still playing, so to speak, to the fact that you got to look after your people. You look after your people, they look after the customers. And if you don't look after your people, they're not going to look after your customers. It's very basic, it's very simple, but extremely difficult for a lot of companies and a lot of people to comprehend. I've worked in environments, and I won't mention where, that there are people who just continue to treat employees as second-class citizens. So anyway, but that's not what we're really focused on here is the idea that there's meaning in everything we do. There has to be meaning in everything we do. You look at advertising, for example. I think we talked about that on other occasions, but I'm going to show 3 or 4 advertisements that are absolutely, in my view at least, both creative and also they are advertising with a meaning, especially the emotional connection aspect. You know, everybody's concerned, everybody's interested in creating emotional connections, you know. And even when it comes to the internet, we all hear the all too often, we are technically connected, but emotionally disconnected because of the internet and all this. That too is another subject. But when you look at some of the advertising, such as that I've presented earlier here, you will see that there are the emotional connections. They are very creative with a purpose, So everything we do has to have, especially in management, but also in your personal affairs, in personal life, there has to be a meaning as to why we do something. I don't think anything happens.
Peter, the key here is that all the involved stakeholders are engaged in that meaning. And what I have paid attention to in some dysfunctional groups, either if we talk about friendly groups or intimate relationships or business groups, they fall in the trap at the beginning to say that we have the same mission, we're together in this and blah blah, and then it comes the selfish factor, and one thinks that is better than the other, or can do better alone or whatever, and this engagement is lost of the common mission. And this is how relationships end, intimate or business-wise.
Yeah, well, again, the whole idea of, if I can just go back to the idea of symbiosis and concept, and because it's basically about collaboration. That's what we're talking about. The importance of collaboration, and but again, some of the principles that ideas or principles that I apply also both at work and in life is integrity. Integrity and trust is extremely important. I think it all begins there. If you don't have that, you really don't have much. Any relationship is bound to collapse. It's only a matter of time. And I think it's continuous learning is another. To continually educate, do the research, and again, through education, you're continuously learning. And the key again is this idea of collaboration. It's all about a collaborative environment so that people can flourish. By flourish, I mean the key thing about flourishing is that they are enabled to reach their true potential. And how many people really get to reach their true potential within an organizational setup. Again, it depends on leadership. It depends on their managers and their leaders. So that's, I do want to say, I should mention though, earlier, it came to mind when we were talking about creativity and change. I mean, you look at most of the great ideas that have come about again through travel and experience and just curious people. How do you become creative? How do you bring it? We talked about how you bring about change. I mean, there's all kinds of theories and practices out there that people can Google. But you see, take Akio Morita and the Sunny Walkman. Back in the 80s, I think it was, when he traveled to New York and he saw the African Americans carrying these ghetto blasters. They were listening to all this, loud music everywhere on the streets and so on. So Akio saw this and said, wow, wouldn't it be a good idea if we can put a little transistor together and give them some earplugs? And of course, the Sonny Walkman was born. Now, no amount of research would have ever shown Morita or his colleagues or Sony, for that matter, to create a good example. Another example would be Jobs, Steve Jobs, for example. He was also very much like that. A great observer. And it's the thing is. Another thing comes to mind is the wheels on our suitcases. I mean, why didn't they put wheels on suitcases 20, 30 years ago? Why? It saves my life has improved enormously with wheels on. In fact, when I was in Japan, they've done away with the bellboys in some hotels. They don't need people to carry suitcases. Even an 80-year-old person can wheel a suitcase to his room. So it's really all about being observant and curious. And the thing about creativity also, because it relates very much to change. Once you need to make a change, you got to be creative with your decision making. And the thing about change is that it's learnable. It's learnable. There are those who are really, really great at it, and there are those who are just not so great, but doing okay. So it's. I believe that like the philosophical, I suppose, addition here is that we all see the same things, but think of them in different ways, right? Yes. We all see the same things, but we think of them in different ways. So what you need to do, or anyone, I suppose, who's interested, needs to just start seeing things differently a little bit from a different. And I would suggest. Of course, Edward de Bono was a pioneer in this. I remember I read his book back as a university student, and it kind of really changed my thinking in many, many dramatic ways. It was the use of lateral thinking, Edward de Bono. And I give some examples in the book I put together. But if you really want to get some insights on that, read his book, The Use of Lateral Thinking by Edward de Bono. He talks about lateral thinking, creative thinking, and logical thinking, right brain thinking. Excuse me. The thing is, they're both good. They're both useful. It's not a zero-sum game. It's not that you do more of one or less of the other and so on. But the fact, what you need to be cognizant of both, and then you can mix and match, and be the alchemist. But you got to be, you need to be aware and relevant, and you need to be observant. A lot of people see things, they look, but what do they see? I used to say that to the managers, I'd walk by and I'd see somebody unhappy. And I'd say, well, what did you do? You just walked by. Didn't you see that customer is unhappy? Didn't you see that through their body language that they want something? You see what I mean? You got to train you. You got to look for things. So it is trainable and it is learnable.
Either you don't.
Well, again, up to a point. If let's say that, and I'm not disagreeing with you, there are some people that just don't have it. Period. No matter what you do, they're in their sort of myopic world. But at the same time, the key is to recognize that you've got some development to do in certain areas. Look, even great artists have their coaches. I mean, you look at these great musicians and all this. They have their coaches that help them become more divine, as they say, And you look at these these tennis people, tennis stars, they have their coaches. Why? So, it's a constant, it's a learning process, but you have to be alert and you have to want to. The key thing is to want. There are some people who just don't want to. I never, I couldn't deal with people who didn't want to do anything. I just put them aside. If you don't want, if somebody says to me, I don't care, I don't want, that's fine. And then I would focus on those that do care and do want. Nobody wants to waste their time.
No. And my last question, Peter, would be, what particular ideas and principles do you apply in your daily life that someone can also find and be motivated from your books?
Well, I think it's, you just manage by example. I think that the best answer I can give to that is that, excuse me, the best answer I can give is that you have to be, you just need to be constantly wanting to improve yourself. It's all attitude, as we've said before. Good attitude, good results. Bad attitude, bad results. By good attitude, I mean positive thoughts, positive mental attitude. If you're negative and if you're looking for the negatives, then you kind of stay there for a long time. I think that you need to, and Goethe said it best, if I may quote. He says, "Before you become somebody, you have to be that somebody." It's a very favorite of mine, because you have to act. You have to act the part you want to become. That's brilliant. It's so simple. But yet most philosophical dogma principles are very, very simple. There's no need, we tend to many times, we need to simplify things, and become reductionists and simplify for the sake of simplicity and understanding, because everything communicates, everything we do, it communicates a message. So we just need to do those things. They're very simple things, but we can't just say one thing and do another. It's better just to be that thing that you want to be, or that somebody you want to be. And eventually somebody's going to notice. Besides, you'll have the results to prove.
And this is pretty much also in psychology called the mirror effect, that we tend to choose environments and friends and businesses and whatever that actually make us feel more comfortable in one way or another, that influences us in a positive way, and vice versa. So from the mirror of our souls, this will be the closure of our discussion today, windows to the world. Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you.